ठीक है. So we'll be creating an index.html file and यहाँ पे this and let me do script. Yeah, let's go live. ठीक है, तो let's do a quick recap of whatever we have learned so far, at least in the last session या फिर ये sprint में. तो overall we have covered topics like objects, right? We have covered functions and we have covered function inside object, which is basically your object methods. Yes, overall ये तीन topics cover हुए, right? So in objects, why do we need object जब हमारे पास array है already? Screen is not visible, guys. Is my screen is visible or not? Can you guys confirm? It should be, right? ठीक है. So why do we need object if we already have array, right? To store information about a single entity, but a lots of information, right? So let's say कि हमारे पास एक classroom है, उसमें we have a student one, right? And this guy has some information like name, let's say name one, right? They have an ID, right? A 01. This can be this format, and they have certain subjects, right, which they have picked. So उन्होंने लिए हैं to study, right? So we can have the codes, right? Something like this. उसी तरीके से we can have multiple of these objects, right? Right? So when we have to store information of an entire classroom in somewhere, so what would we do? Individual student के लिए will be storing their information in object, and then what we will do is we'll be basically creating an array, and let's say कि मैं इसको बोलता हूँ classroom, right? And what I'll do is I'll just pick my classroom and I'll write dot push, and उसके अंदर I'll send student. Yes. So what happens? Camera. All right. Switch. Okay. So what happens actually in here? क्या हो रहा है? So what I'm doing is I'm basically creating a information data structure for a student, and उस student को I'm creating an empty classroom array, उसमें मैंने push कर दिया. So if I go and do console.log of classroom, no? Classroom. If I go and check my console, you'll see I'm printing an array which has length of 1, and if I open that array, I have this first student. ठीक? Clear? तो इसी तरीके से we can create multiple of these students. Right? अब now the question comes कि if we are creating multiple of these students, next student बनाने के लिए what I'll have to do is I'll have to create another student 2 equals to this, and then copy this entire thing और उसको paste करूंगा. Name 2, ID maybe 2, and this guy has one more subject. Yes. And if I have to send this student in my classroom array, फिर क्या करूंगा? Again same thing, classroom dot push याद है? What does dot push do? It basically takes thing and adds it at the end of an array, right? So again, if I go and write classroom dot push and student 2, you guys will see that now we have array of 2 objects which has these data. Yes. Does this make sense? उसी तरीके से we can have methods inside objects, right? So basically I have an object, and if I store a function in this object in form of key value pair, उन चीजों को बोलेंगे object methods, right? So how do we do that? We basically, let's say again, इसमें I add a greet method, and I'll just go and write a function, right? What was this thing called? Just this thing individually. इतनी सी चीज को क्या बोल देते हैं? Individually, this function with no name. What do we call it? Anonymous function. Everyone, anonymous function, right? So those guys who have joined later, guys, we're just revising stuff. कुछ नया नहीं कर. ठीक है? So just follow through. ठीक. So now I have an anonymous function, but I have defined this anonymous function with a name. So finally, is it a function statement or function expression? Expression. Take. Now what I'll do is I'll just take this thing and I'll write a console.log in it, right? I have to add a comma here so that I don't get an error. And in this console.log, I just want to print the student's name. So how can I access object wala name? Object ke andar ka name. So I should be writing this dot name. If I just write name, क्या होगा? क्या होगा? Function scope is gonna always point toward global scope, right? तो वो global scope में जाके it will try to find a name variable. But is it present? Is name variable present in global scope? No, no. So if I run this greet function, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? I'm gonna get undefined. Undefined. Error नहीं आएगा. I'm gonna get a placeholder value which is gonna be undefined. Clear? Clear? ठीक है. So to prevent that, what I'll do is I'll just add hi and I'll add this dot name. Now this is fine. This is fine. Take. Okay. Okay. So the second or smaller thing comes is basically we have array, right? We have this classroom array, and in that classroom array, I have these objects. And in very first object, I have added a greet function. So how can I call this function actually? Function को कैसे call करेंगे? Very first thing, should we be able to first access this object? This object, right? How can we do that? I'll be visiting classroom. Classroom का सबसे पहला element is this object. So should I be doing classroom 0? I'll be printing just that object. सिर्फ वो object print करूँगा. Then in this object, should I be accessing greet? So this function is there, and finally I just have to call it, right? So I'm printing hi name 1. Clear? Clear? Second. So the point was that we are creating objects like this, and उसके बाद उसको array में push कर रहे हैं, right? So don't you think this has a lot of code to write again and again and again? Yes, yes. Why do we have functions in JavaScript? ताकि we can make a piece of code reusable. Can we make this thing reusable? Can we make this setup reusable? Yes. How? How so? Okay. So let's try to make this thing reusable. Let's see how we can maybe do it, right? So first thing first, I'll be defining a function, right? And let's call it student data or something, right? And in this function, I'm gonna have an array, right? So let array equals to an empty array. And outside of this, let's do one thing. This function is gonna accept these parameters, right? The functions, whenever we are calling now, will be passing name of the student, ID of the student, and the subject array of that student. Take. So let's do that. Let's pass name of the student. So name, ID, and subject. Take. And in here, what I'll do is I'll just create a object, right? So I'll create a dummy object, and in this object, I'll write name, take name value, ID value, and subject. Take. So I'll create a name key, and uske andar I'll put this name value, right? तो अभी क्या होगा, whenever I'm gonna call this function, am I gonna assign this name और name key and name value जो भी हम पास करेंगे फंक्शन में? Yes, yes, okay. Let's see. First create this thing. I'll show you by printing it, right? तो यहाँ पे id वैल्यू भी सेंड कर देते हैं एंड यहाँ पे फॉर आवर subjects let's pass subject var. ठीक, so now that I've done that, what I'll do is I'll just do console.log object for now, right? I'll just do console.log object. अभी क्या करते हैं, let's go and call this student data function, right? So very first time when I'm calling it, I'm gonna call it with name 1 and I'm gonna call it with id of 1 and I'm gonna call it with English and let's say maths. So do we have a new student with that particular data? Right? If I again call this function with another object, will I be creating a new object? नया object बनाएंगे? No? Okay. Let's say if I go in here and if I write student data and इसके अंदर let's pass 2 and let's pass claims and assistant. So don't we have a new object? एक नया object नहीं आ गया? Right? तो एक student है, second student and we have new set of objects. Right? But the thing is कि हम function में ही we are trying to console it. So we're not basically making this thing reusable. Right? This object is there, but rather than printing it, we can't really use it. Right? And also we are losing the previous one. Very well. So basically what I'm going to do is as soon as I create this object, I'll put it in this array. Right? So what I'll do is I'll just do array dot push object and finally ये functions है ना, I'll just return that array. Tick. So now what's gonna happen whenever I'm calling this function, I'm gonna get an array in return. So I'll do one thing, I'll console you guys. We have a small problem in here. You guys will tell me what's that. Right? The very first console, yes, we are getting an array with object name 1 and id 1. Take, let's say if I go and run this one also. Take इसको भी run करते हैं console.log this thing. We have two different arrays. इसमें we have name 1. In second one we have Virat. We are not storing these objects, are we? Array में object store नहीं हो रहे, it's getting refreshed. क्यों हो रहा है? Can anyone tell me? Because every time जब हम function को call कर रहे हैं ना, we are recreating a new array, we are reassigning a new array. So in previous JavaScript का memory, if there was an array na with this value, something value, it's gonna get refreshed with this thing. So rather than doing this, should we declare this array variable globally? ताकि जब function run हो, we are not gonna again refresh the array. What do you guys think? Globally define करना चाहिए. How many of us agree? Everyone? Okay, that's great. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna take this thing and I'm gonna define it globally. First time calling it, we just have one object. Second time calling it, we have array with two different objects. Cool. Now we are storing things. Now we are storing objects in array. Right? And just look at the lines of code that we have written, right? And look at this thing that we have done, right? Can you guys understand the usefulness of function, how much redundancy it is decreasing, right? Itna sara line of code is just getting decreased to this. Take, I'll just reiterate it once again. तो जिनको समझ नहीं आया, you guys can take it from there. Take, but चलो, let's do a recap once again. So what we did initially was हमने एक function बनाया which were accepting 3 parameters, right? I hope you guys are well versed with the terminologies. Function में जब bracket के अंदर we are accepting these variables, these are called parameters. यहाँ पे क्या बोलते हैं इनको? When we are calling it and passing something, arguments. Correct, correct. Now back to the function. What we did in function now, we were creating an empty array. Then we were creating a dynamic object. What do I mean by dynamic object? This thing is going to have specific keys, but the values are going to be different based on how we are calling that function. Function जिस तरीके से कॉल हो रहा है, जिस भी प्रॉपर्टीज के साथ कॉल हो रहा है, we're going to put that thing in object and we're going to push it in array. And finally, we're just returning that array, nothing much. Take clear hai? Clear hai? Right? So now every time when we are calling this object, na, what was happening? We were creating new array. Why? Because a function was running from scratch, right? So everything was starting from empty array. Rather than doing that, what should we do? Array ko globally define karenge. Now what happens? Array is going to be defined globally. It's going to act as a store, right? And wahan pe we're just going to store the objects. Clear? Everyone? Sabko samajh aa gaya? Right? So keep this thing in mind. This thing is going to be very important going forward. We're going to give it a new name, or like very advanced kind of name, but logic is going to be exactly like this. Take yes, Manish, sort of that. Right? Okay. So now that we have array of objects, should we be able to travel over these array of objects? Right? Array of objects super should we be able to travel? Right? So all you have to do is, for running a loop over array, all we have to do is we have to run a for loop. Right? So let I equals to 0, I is less than our array dot length, and I'll do I plus plus. In iske andar, let's say if I want to console name of each and every student, all I have to do is I have to go and write console.log, and I'll write array I. So it's going to print each and every object, and I'm going to do a dot name, right? So it's just going to print the name of these things. Make sense? Make sense? Make sense? Array को global scope में define करने से and function scope में define करने से क्या difference है? Okay, so the difference between defining array in global scope and function scope is very small. The thing is that function scope में when we are defining an array na, whenever we are calling this function, the array is getting created with an empty version of itself. Right? जब ये function run हो रहा है, we are creating a new array which is going to be empty. So if I want to store some data in this array, this way is not going to work. Rather than doing this, मैं क्या कर रहा हूँ? I'm creating this array in global scope. अब क्या हो रहा है? In this array, whenever I'm running a function, na, array.push object is happening in global scope, so it's not getting refreshed each and every time. Okay? So preventing that is why we are doing that global and functional. ठीक है? ठीक है? Okay. So how many parameters can we declare? As many as you want. Jitna man utna declare karo. That's on you. That's me. Plus, if we want to go over it and want to print something, we can do it like this. Right? So what is it? We heard about empty because the code is running, like every time you're calling a function, code is running from line number 42 to 50. Right? So if there was a let array equals to empty defined initially, and uske andar we were pushing array dot push object, abhi fir se that let array equals to empty is redefined with a new value. ठीक है? ठीक है? So now array के अंदर it's not just कि we can store object का data structure, we can even store array के अंदर array. Return can catch global also, yeah, of course. So if something is defined in global na, global में अगर let's say array is defined, so we can always access that thing in each and every scope. be it function scope, be it if else का scope, कोई भी scope हो, we can access it everywhere if it's defined globally. इसीलिए some things are defined globally, some things are defined locally. ठीक है, but locally everything is available in global, that's not. Make sense? चलो. So now the second part is कि okay, that's fine, we can store objects in array. Can we store arrays inside objects? Arrays inside array, right? What do I mean by that? Let's say I have an array and इसके अंदर I'm creating an array, right? Now we all know कि given that JavaScript is loosely typed, we can store any data type in it, right? So array के अंदर we can store any data type, be it 1, 2, be it a string, be it a boolean, right? We can store anything. We can even store arrays, right? So let's say कि मैं इस array के अंदर I'm storing 1, 2, 3, and then I'm storing another array which is called 4, 5, 6, and then I'm storing another array which is 7, 8, 9, right? So think of it as we are drawing a map, right? हमने एक map का data लिया and we have given things a coordinate, right? So first thing is gonna be here, second thing is gonna be here, third thing is gonna be here, fourth thing is gonna be here, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, and ninth. And हर एक coordinate पे ना we are giving it some values which are these values 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Right? So this is like 2D or multi-dimensional array का ना use case ही यही होता है. Like we have matrix like this, right? जब 2 dimension होता है ना, this grid format, right? It's like a grid format. Remember, we have rows, we have columns, right? तो जब ऐसा grid format आता है ना, it's used in like ये जो हमारा screen है, right? This screen, it's gonna have some coordinates for each pixels, right? Screen is created by pixels. I hope after covering HTML इतना तो clear हो गया होगा कि the screen is created by multiple small pixels. तो इस तरीके से ना काफी सारे small why am I able to move it, काफी सारे small pixels होते individual इस तरीके से, right? तो these things इनके जो data store होता है ना, it's stored in somewhat this format, राइट? मैट्रिक्स के फॉर्मेट में स्टोर होता है, 2D एरे के फॉर्मेट में स्टोर होता है, या फिर यू कैन कॉल इट मल्टी डायमेंशनल एरे, राइट? इट हैज मल्टीपल डायमेंशन. ठीक. सो हाउ कैन वी एक्सेस और एक्सेस एलिमेंट इन अ मल्टी डायमेंशनल एरे, राइट? कहने का मतलब इफ आई जस्ट एक्सेस दिस थिंग, कैन आई कॉल दिस थिंग अ रो? एक रो, दो रो, तीन रो. एंड इफ आई एक्सेस 1, 4, 7, 2, 5, 8, 3, 6, 9, कैन आई कॉल those things column? इनको column बोल सकता हूँ, right? तो it's somewhat like that. एक काम करते हैं, let's just run let I equals to 0 and I is less than array dot length and I plus plus. Quick pop quiz. What's gonna be the length of this array? Array का length क्या होगा? 3. Why? Because it has 3 overall elements in it. 1, 2 and 3, right? तो ये जो outer loop है ना, it is defined for your rows, right? So first जो आप array dot length करोगे ना, that thing is gonna define your row, right? So this thing is gonna define my row. अगर मैं यहाँ पे जाके if I go and write console dot log array I'm gonna access 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7, 8, 9 individually. This is exactly as expected, right? Right? But let's say कि मुझे individual array पे, let's say कि यहाँ पे जाता हूँ, right? And in here I'm storing let individual array में I'm storing array I, right? तो मैं इस पूरे array की value I'm storing it in this individual array. So again this is array. Can I again run a loop on that array? उस array पे फिर से loop चला सकता हूँ क्या? What do you guys think? Let's see. So let's say if I again run a loop, let j equals to 0 and j is less than array, array nahi, now individual array is there. So individual array dot length and I'll do j plus plus. So will I be running loop on this individual array? Will I be accessing 1, 2 and 3 individually, right? ठीक है, तो एक काम करते हैं, let's go in here and let's do a console dot log individual array j, right? So are we accessing each and every element? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? हर एक एलिमेंट एक्सेस कर पा रहे हैं. So guys, this is basically a matrix or a two-dimensional array, and this is how we can traverse on it. We can access each and every element of it. Right? Now, एक loop है, and inside that for loop, we are running another for loop. So can I say कि this loop is nested? एक loop के अंदर another loop is there. Can I say that? Right? So guys, we have just printed a nested loop. Tick, tick. So this is how we run a nested loop. ठीक. Alright, so I'll reiterate everything once again. एक बार फिर से everyone जिन्होंने skip कर दिया था, just look at once again. ठीक. So what we did is हमने एक array बनाया, and in that array we put three small array 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7, 8, 9. Right? So this kind of setup is called multi-dimensional array, या फिर for this particular case a 2D array. इतना पार्ट क्लियर है everyone? कोई है जिसको सेंस नहीं बनाती ये बात? इतनी सी चीज इतना क्लियर है. ठीक. उसके बाद नेक्स्ट स्टेप क्या था? We were traveling over this array and we were getting the individual array. Right? So if I just print individual array, will I be printing this entire thing, and this entire thing in 3 iterations? Yes or no? Yes, yes. And given that it's an array, right? So can we again travel over it with a for loop? फिर से उसके ऊपर travel कर सकते हैं with a for loop, right? So again we wrote a for loop, and in that what we did was individual array को access किया and we were writing it in this for loop. Clear है? Clear है? अभी ठीक है. ठीक है. तो यूजुअली क्या होता है ना, वी डोंट एग्जैक्टली डिफाइन अ इंडिविजुअल वेरिएबल फॉर इट. ऑल्दो जब हम सीखते हैं ना, तो दिस थिंग हेल्प्स अ लॉट. आई होप इट हेल्प यू गाइस विजुअलाइज थिंग. बट रादर देन दिस ना, हम लोग एक कोऑर्डिनेट टाइप ऑफ सिस्टम फॉलो करते हैं. वी डोंट नीड दिस. हम क्या करते हैं, वी डिफाइन दीज थिंग इंडिविजुअली, और जो कॉलम्स है ना, वी डिफाइन इट विद एरे आई. एंड यहाँ पे जाके ऑल वी हैव टू डू इज वी हैव टू राइट कंसोल dot log array I g. ठीक. तो ये still printing everything. कुछ नया नहीं किया. Just we did not created this individual array thing and we just replaced it with array I directly. I hope this makes sense. समझ आता है, right? It's not big thing. All we did was individual array को replace कर दिया with array I. Make sense? All right. जिनको फिर से नहीं सेंस बना रहे गाइस, देखो कुछ नहीं किया मैंने. ये देखो यहाँ पे, यहाँ तक समझ आता है. यहाँ पे जो किया है या इतना क्लियर है एवरीवन? किसी को कोई डाउट यहाँ तक? एनीवन? नो. ठीक है. तो यहाँ पे वी हैव डिफाइंड अ वेरिएबल फॉर एरे आई, राइट? तो इफ आई डोंट डिफाइन अ वेरिएबल फॉर एरे आई हैव टू डायरेक्टली राइट दिस एरे आई. तो बस वही किया है मैंने, वेरिएबल हटा दिया और वेरिएबल की जगह वी जस्ट डायरेक्टली रोट द वैल्यू, राइट? तो एरे आई की जगह आई हैव जस्ट रिप्लेस्ड इट विद एरे आई. अगेन इन हियर एरे आई. दैट्स ऑल. नथिंग एल्स. नथिंग. ठीक है. Alright. So question usually comes like this कि line 72 contains all elements. Line 72 contains all elements. Okay, line 72 contains these arrays at individual iterations. First iteration it will contain this array, second iteration it will contain this, third iteration it will contain this. Clear? Can you do a dry run of this code? चलो कर देते हैं, but this might take time. Anyways, let's do it quickly. Sure. So there you go. Here, I'm just gonna put this thing quickly. So there you go. यहाँ पे I'm gonna create one line for this is gonna be for I, and यहाँ पे we're gonna have for j. right? Chalo. So when I is 0, right? When I is 0, we are accessing 1, 2, 3 or not? We're accessing the very first array inside it, right? So all we are doing is we're accessing array of 1, 2, and 3. Right now, the next step was in inner loop. We were taking this array and we're running a loop over it again. Or j jo tha, it was starting from 0 again. Right. So now, will I be going through each and everything and will I be printing 1, 2, and 3? Right. Right. So just exact same thing is happening over and over again. ठीक, तो next iteration में क्या हो रहा है? 1 is gonna be there and we're gonna have a new array which has 4, 5, and 6. Same thing happens. This thing is gonna be there. J is again gonna start from 0. So 0 equals to 4, individually 5, individually 6. That's all. That's all. और कुछ नहीं होगा. In console, y array I and j. चलो वो भी बताता हूँ. So so you can think of it as a coordinate. Basically what happens is everything is mapped to I or j के base पे. ठीक, so think of it as in format of row and columns. Code में ही समझाता हूँ, it will make more sense there actually. ठीक है, so think of it as a format of row and column. So जो outer loop है ना, it's basically your row, and inner loop वाला elements are your columns, right? So column is equals to array I dot length, right? So now if I tell you guys कि जो index है 0 for row और रो में 0th इंडेक्स और कॉलम के बेसिस पे 0th इंडेक्स पे कौन सा एलिमेंट है, विच इज इट गोना बी? इफ आई जस्ट आस्क यू दैट कि रो में 0th पोजीशन एंड कॉलम में भी 0th पोजीशन, द फर्स्ट वन, द फर्स्ट वन. सो लेट्स से कि अगर मैं रो सेम रखता हूं, आई एम कीपिंग रो एज 0 बट आई इंक्रीमेंट द कॉलम बाय 1, विच एलिमेंट एम आई गोना एक्सेस? दिस वन. रो इज स्टिल 0 बट कॉलम इज 1, right? Let's say if I go and write 2 comma 2, so we are going and looking for 0, 1, 2. ये वाला row पकड़ेंगे, right? First is gonna be always row, and in this row we are gonna search for the second element which is 0, 1, 2. So is it 9? Is it 9? Right? So basically that's what happening in here. In the very first iteration, when I is equals to 0, the array I is gonna be 0 for this entire loop, right? So very first iteration mein I is gonna be 0 and this entire loop is gonna run for j, right? तो अभी क्या होगा, j के लिए रन करेगा 0, 1 and 2 के लिए. ठीक, तो overall the structure is gonna be 0, 1 for first iteration, 0, 2 for second iteration, and 0, 3 for third iteration, right? So are we not giving it coordinates for very first wala row 1, 2, 3, right? So that's exactly what we're doing, nothing else. Clear? Clear? Sure. So again, there are few types of question which usually come in this. The most common is do a sum of each and every element in this array. Can we do that? Array में जितने भी element present है, can we do a sum of it? Okay, let me see the chats. Yeah, so you guys think you can do one thing, write a quick code for this. कैसे sum कैसे करेंगे? It's just going to be 4 lines of code, so quickly try everyone. I'll give you guys 3 minutes. Try it. The question is, you have this array, this 2-dimensional array. You have to do sum of all the elements, right? So 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 till 9. शिफ्ट प्लस एंटर ताकि आप चैट में नेक्स्ट लाइन पे जाओ. Instead of array ij, we will put sum equals to at the end and we'll console. Yes, correct, Prashant. Very good. Sheikh, correct. Whenever this thing is gonna give you not a number, nan, you have to run a loop on inner array also, right? ठीक है folks, one more minute, everyone please try. At least एक approach बना लो दिमाग में कि yeah, that's how it's gonna be done. Santosh, correct. Paras, correct. So guys, let's see quickly. So first thing first, let's see how we can travel over this array and print each and every element. That's easy. Pehle we have to print the rows. So how can we print the rows? Let I equals to 0. I is less than array dot length and I'll do a I plus plus. Right. So now we're traveling over the array and we are getting each and every array inside array. Right. What's the next step to get the columns? How do we do that? हम लिखते हैं अंदर let j equals to 0. J is less than array I dot length. Right. We are picking individual elements. Right. Individual array and उसका length कर रहे हैं. तो array I dot length and I'll do not j plus plus. Take in here, if I again do console.log array I and uska j, so I'll be getting each and every element. All we have to do is we have to define a sum globally, and what we have to do is we have to basically do sum plus equals to array I and j. And finally, we can just go and print console.log sum. Right? So we're getting 45. Clear? Clear? Acha. Let's say if I put this sum in here, will I be doing anything wrong? क्या गलत कर रहा हूं मैं? What's wrong? Why am I getting an error? Sum is not defined because it is defined inside a scope. Curly brackets के अंदर define होगा. Right? So we should not be able to access it outside of it. Take, let's say कि if we make this thing a var, so now the error is not there, right? But we are getting sum as 24. कोई बताएगा how are we getting 24? Santosh, correct? And apply this thing in this 24. Right? So every time जितनी बार loop run कर रहा है ना, we are making this sum to be 0. Right? हम sum को कर दे रहे हैं 0. So finally, when for the last row, when this loop is running, the sum will again be 0, and then we'll add up the last wale elements in this sum and we finally print it. Right? So 7 plus 8, 15 plus 9, 24. Correct? Correct? And is that thing making sense? कि क्यों हो रहा है? Easy है? Easy है? Easy है? ठीक है. So just keep these things in mind. Also आपको difference समझ आया कि देखो var ने एक sum दे दिया, but let was not giving this sum, right? An expected behavior, right? It was throwing an error, right? तो अभी यही होता है. Why do we need to use let rather than var? Because देखो यहाँ पे var was giving us a solution, right? Now if some developer has written var rather than let, तो हमें एक solution मिला होगा. Let's say कि someone was assuming solution is always correct, वो उसके साथ चला जाएगा, right? But this thing was not correct, right? लेट के साथ क्या हुआ, द एरर वॉज थ्रोन, तो डेवलपर विल सी कि हाँ एरर इज देयर, समथिंग इज रॉन्ग, ठीक है, दैट शुड बी फिक्स्ड। क्लियर है गाइस, कोई दिक्कत कोई परेशानी नहीं, ठीक है। तो लेट्स मूव फॉरवर्ड क्विकली। दिस इज हाउ यू क्रिएट 2D एरे, एंड इस तरीके से यू क्रिएट नेस्टेड लूप्स टू ट्रैवल ओवर इट, राइट, दैट्स प्रीटी मच इट, कुछ नया नहीं, ठीक है। नाउ लास्ट लेक्चर में कितने टाइप्स के फंक्शंस किए थे हमने, कितने टाइप्स के फंक्शंस किए थे? एक पढ़ा था फंक्शन एक्सप्रेशन, एक पढ़ा था फंक्शन स्टेटमेंट, एक पढ़ा था एनोनिमस फंक्शन, एनीथिंग एल्स, एनीथिंग एल्स? देख आज हम दो नए फंक्शन इस लिस्ट में ऐड करेंगे, एक को बोलेंगे कॉल बैक फंक्शन एंड एक को बोलेंगे हायर ऑर्डर फंक्शन, राइट, ये दोनों इंटर रिलेटेड है। लेट्स सी हाउ व्हाट इज कॉल बैक फंक्शन एंड हाउ इज हायर ऑर्डर फंक्शन, एंड दीज टू रिलेटेड। ठीक, तो पहले तो लेट्स क्रिएट अ फंक्शन एंड लेट्स कॉल इट add a comma b, and what it does is it returns one नहीं one नहीं, it returns a plus b, simple function, a very simple function, right? अच्छा, अब एक छोटी सी बात बताओ, can I define a function as a variable? Is that possible in JavaScript? Possible है, possible है। If we go for function expression, right, all we have to do is we have to define let sub equals to, and we'll write function, and there you go, return a minus b, but of course it should be accepting a comma b, right? तो इस तरीके से we can write function expression, right? तो जिनको याद नहीं है, just a quick recap for that, ठीक है। So now the thing is कि we are seeing that function can even be passed as a variable, right? So आगे चल के you might not hear a statement which is basically says that functions in JavaScript are first class citizens, right? Why so? Because they have every feature available, right? सारे features available होते हैं इनको, they can be passed as an variable and even can have methods, ये चीज बाद में देखेंगे, but for now we have seen कि we can pass it as variable, right? सिर्फ variable नहीं, given that is something can be passed as variable, do you think कि that thing can be passed as a argument? ठीक, कहने का मतलब let me reiterate it a bit, जिनको पल्ले नहीं पड़ा मैंने बोला क्या। Do you guys remember when I told you guys कि if I run this thing like 1 and 2, the arguments that we pass are sent as values, और ये जो parameters होते हैं वो होते हैं एक तरीके से variable. So in hindsight a variable is defined और उसको जो है यहाँ से value मिलती है. So a will be equals to 1 and let's say b will be equals to 2. Remember this thing. Something like this, got of correct reference, right? So let's assume hypothetically कि एक function के अंदर ना we're passing another function. Let's say I'm passing this sub function, right? So if I pass this sub function and if I go in here and if I create a function का variable, so will something like this happen or not? We can have func and this thing is gonna have this sub, and this sub is overall equals to this thing. Is it not? Is it not? So do you think it might be possible कि functions को we can pass as arguments? Might be possible, might be possible. ठीक है. So let's try to look this thing in a bit better way. Let's do one thing. Let's create a function and this is gonna be called calculator, right? And ये function basically accepts number, take तो num1, num2 and finally it accepts a operation, right? And your operation is gonna be a function, right? So something like this, again num1 number, num2 number and operation, equals to function, right? This function can be anything, we will pass. Can we assume something like this? Just assuming for now. Take. So let's say यहाँ पे जाके if I create a small function again, add and this thing a comma b and it returns a plus b. So let's say if I call this calculator and इसके अंदर I'm passing num1 basically 1, num2 basically 2, and in case of operation ना I'm passing this function, right? तो मैंने function का नाम pass कर दिया. So if I go in here, something like this is gonna happen, yes or no? आराम से देखो और बताओ, chill करके देखो and tell me कि something like this is gonna happen or not. Or at least we are expecting something like this has happened because we have learned JavaScript from scratch, fundamentals से सीखा है, so we can expect things. ठीक, so let's do one thing. Let's do a quick console, right? So num1, num2, right, as expected, and if I pick the operation as expected or not. As expected, function is there, right? हमने function को call नहीं किया है because we don't want to run it here itself. ठीक, अब हम क्या करेंगे? We are gonna pick this function operation and इसको we are gonna call with num1 and num2, right? Let's create a variable, let value equals to this. What am I doing in line number 142? I'm calling this function and am I passing 1 and 2 in it? 1 and 2 in it. So if I go and write console.log value, what am I gonna get? Everyone. If I write console.log value in it, what am I gonna get? 3, right? So अगर यहाँ पे मैं value करूँ, मुझे 3 मिलने वाला है. So what I'll do is finally I'll return the value. Take to line number 151. If I pick this thing and if I do console.log, I'm gonna get 3. Right? So basically हमने क्या किया? We created a master function, we created a very parent function, we created a big function, right? And उस function के अंदर we passed another function as a argument, right? And line number 142 पे क्या किया? हमने उस function को call किया with these parameters जो कि हम function में भेज रहे हैं. We are sending them. ठीक, तो individually out of context line number 42 should be giving us 3, right? 3 दे रहा है, we are storing that 3 in a variable called let value and we are just returning that value. ठीक, तो does this code make sense? Is it running as expected? Does that thing make sense? Yes or no will do. Everyone, सब कोई, I'm not sure सब कोई present है कि नहीं. तो guys 2 + 2 कितना होता है? 4, right? 4, ठीक है. तो ठीक है, अगेन 4 was a lot more than जितना आपने लोगों ने yes लिखा, right? तो yes or no अगेन समझ आता है? Line number 41 were giving an empty function for operation param, right? So this thing empty function I've just written it as for reference, right? Line number 41 is gonna give us this entire function in return. Let me show you. So if I uncomment this thing now, you'll notice that this thing is returning this entire function और उस function को call करना बाकी है to run it. ठीक, उसी तरीके से now what we can do is we can create multiple of these small functions, right? So I can create subtract a comma b and what this does is a minus b, right? All I have to do is I have to call the calculator console.log calculator. I'm gonna pass the numbers that I want to calculate and I can pass whatever function. ठीक, so is that working? Working, right? So am I again increasing the reusability? All we have to do is create a function and everything is gonna be done, right? So guys, basically क्या होता है ना, when we are able to pass a function as an argument in another function ना, that function is called callback function, right? So line number 155 पे we are passing add as an argument, which is a function, right? तो ये जो add होगा ना, this function is gonna be called a callback function. क्या बोलेंगे? क्या बोलेंगे? Callback function. क्यों callback function क्यों बोलते हैं? Because वो function हम लोग we are sending it to a parent function and we are telling कि I'll call you back. अभी के लिए I'm just passing you. I'll call you later in that function. ठीक है? ठीक है? So उसी तरीके से line number 155 पे we are making add a callback function. Line number 156 पे we are making subtract as callback function. Right? And the relation between a higher order function and callback function is that the function which accepts callback function ना, जो function callback function को accept करता है, that function is called a higher order function. Clear? So which of these three is a higher order function which is accepting a callback function? Calculator. Right? तो ये जो calculator है, this thing is gonna be a higher order function, and these functions which are passed inside this are gonna be called callback functions. Clear? Line number 142, you guys are asking again and again. Line number 142 पे what we are doing is just look here. यहाँ पे देखो. Let me just comment these two out real quick. अच्छा देखो, एक और छोटी सी चीज बताओ quickly. अभी function is empty, right? Calculator function is empty. There is no return property. We are doing a console.log of this, so we are getting undefined. Why? Because JavaScript is by default returning a return statement with undefined. ठीक है? ठीक है? चल. Back in here, अगर if I go and just console operation, right? So this operation is basically this entire add function. Have I called it anywhere so far? Add function को कहीं पे call किया है क्या? We're not calling add function. So we're just sending this entire function in this calculator, right? If I call this na here, it'll be saying कि I'll be calling that function not a number इसलिए आ रहा है because we haven't provided anything in there, right? So let's say I'm sending num1 and num2 in here. So num1, num2. Right? So I'm getting 3 in first case. Why? Because we are sending number 1 and number 2 in it. So all we did was in line number 142, we just stored that value, right? We stored that value and we returned it. That's all. ठीक, अभी line number 142 clear है? ठीक, everyone? कोड देखना है आराम से देखो. I'll give you 1 minute. आराम से देखो कोड और फिर बताओ कि समझ आता है कि नहीं आता है. आराम से देखो. Take your time. देख लिया? क्लियर है? सर विदाउट वैल्यू के हम रिटर्न नहीं कर सकते क्या? विदाउट वैल्यू इफ यू रिटर्न ना, जावास्क्रिप्ट विल गिव इट्स ओन वैल्यू व्हिच इज योर undefined, right? So let's say if you don't return it with anything, it will print undefined. ठीक, जावास्क्रिप्ट हैज अ placeholder value of undefined. आर्ग्यूमेंट में ऑपरेशन क्यों लिखा है? बिकॉज आई जस्ट वांट नेम दिस आर्ग्यूमेंट एज ऑपरेशन. आई कैन मेक दिस थिंग एनीथिंग, राइट? सिर्फ ऑपरेशन ही क्यों? आई कैन मेक दिस थिंग एनीथिंग, राइट? कुछ it's still gonna be work as usual. It's not necessary कि operation ही लिखना. अलग अलग पैरामीटर यूज हो रहे हो, अलग लग रहे हैं बट लिंक्ड है. द थिंग इज दैट ये छोटी सी चीज दिमाग में रखो, द ऑर्डर इज ऑलवेज गोना बी फॉलोड, राइट? तो इफ यू आर पासिंग num1 as number, num2 as 2 and this thing as 3, they will be accepting it in that serial number only. If you move the serial number up a bit na, so everything is gonna go in disarray. The serial number should be followed. With that you can take a reference. Clear? Clear? line number 42 is necessary. Agar line number 42, if we are not calling it, how are we gonna get the value of these functions? Function go, if we are not calling at all, how will we access the value? Tick, tick. I'll give you guys break. Just clear this thing if this is clear or not. Difference between callback and higher order function and the relation. Clear, everyone? Everyone? ठीक है. So एक again छोटी सी चीज. Let's say if I paste this thing here, right? Again, I have three things up here. Let me just comment this one out. This is the set. I have two things, callback and I have higher order function. Place things in this. कौन सा function callback है और कौन सा function higher order है. Do this, I'll give you guys a break. Shivam, then what you're doing is आप add को साथ ही साथ call कर रहे हो, right? So add will keep add will run here itself. It won't be correct. Take yes, Swapnil, you can. Right? So parent here is a higher order function. And if we start passing these add, subtract, and multiple as parameter or argument, like something like this, parent add comma 1 comma 2, now this thing is gonna be callback function. Clear? चलो ठीक है. तो let's do one thing. Let's give you guys a break of 3 minutes. उसके बाद we'll talk about some inbuilt JavaScript का provided higher order functions. ठीक, चलो. Yes, everyone back. Yes, Rohish, we can do that. Wait, we're doing console.log op num and we're passing. Huh, yes, can do that. Rohish, correct. Okay. So one of you guys asked a nice question. Who is it? Santosh Kumar. If we don't pass a function as argument, but use a function inside another function, will it be still called callback function and main function higher order function? ठीक है. Santosh, present हो? संतोष कुमार प्रेजेंट हो? ठीक है, चलो. सो मैं एक फंक्शन बनाता हूँ. टेल मी इफ यू आर थिंकिंग समथिंग लाइक दैट, और लेट्स से आई हैव अ पेरेंट फंक्शन, राइट? इट डज नथिंग फॉर नाउ. यहाँ पे आई हैव अ फंक्शन व्हिच इज कॉल्ड चाइल्ड फंक्शन, and what it does is it basically console hi, right? So अगर मैं कहता हूँ कि if I go inside this parent, यहाँ पे I'm calling this child function, right? So if I do console, if I just go and call this parent, I'll be printing hi. So your question is, will this child still be called a callback function and will this parent still be called a higher order function? Am I correct? समझ करेक्ट रहा हूँ? ठीक है, ठीक है. तो द थिंग इज कि आप फंक्शन को यू आर स्टिल कॉलिंग इट बैक इनसाइड दिस पेरेंट फंक्शन. यस, yes, function ko you're still calling it inside that parent function. So child function will for sure be called a callback function, right? But parent will not be a higher order function. Why? Higher order function का एक छोटा सा definition होता है. Basically it says it either accepts another function as a parameter or at least returns another function as another function, right? So is this parent function doing any of these two? या तो वो accept कर रहा है as a parameter or is it returning it? कुछ भी नहीं कर रहा है. तो although the child will still be called callback function, parent will not be called a higher order function. But let's say I'm doing a return child, मैंने child को return कर दिया, and now what I'm doing is once child is returned, this parent is gonna be overall a child, right? So I'm gonna call it once again. So I'm gonna print hi, right? अभी क्या हो रहा है? Now we're returning a function. ठीक, तो is the statement still true? Now is it a higher order function? Right? So keep this small thing in mind. ठीक है? ठीक है? I hope this clears it. चलो गाइस, अभी व्हाट आर दोस टू राउंड ब्रैकेट्स? वन राउंड ब्रैकेट समझ आता है? पेरेंट फंक्शन को कॉल कर रहा हूं. ठीक, अभी क्या हो रहा है? दिस पेरेंट फंक्शन इज रिटर्निंग चाइल्ड. चाइल्ड क्या है? इट्स अनदर फंक्शन, राइट? तो दिस ओवरऑल थिंग, इज इट नॉट जस्ट दिस ओवरऑल थिंग? अगर मैं इसको कंसोल करूं तो विल सी कि आई एम गोना गेट दैट चाइल्ड फंक्शन, राइट? तो मैंने क्या किया? मैंने उस फंक्शन को, ओवरऑल चाइल्ड फंक्शन को फिर से कॉल कर दिया, तो एक और ब्रैकेट लगा. आई एम जस्ट कॉलिंग इट once again. That's all. क्लियर गाइज? कुछ भी नया नहीं होता है जावास्क्रिप्ट में. ट्रस्ट मी, यू गाइज ऑलरेडी आर डन विद द फंडामेंटल्स. ऑल यू हैव टू डू इज स्टार्ट मेकिंग कनेक्शंस. क्या हुआ, कैसे हुआ, दैट्स ऑल बीन टॉट टू यू गाइज. बस कनेक्शंस बना लो एंड यू आर गुड विद जावास्क्रिप्ट. ट्रस्ट मी. ठीक है? कुछ भी नया नहीं है. ऑल यू हैव टू डू इज जस्ट थिंक इन टर्म्स ऑफ होलिस्टिक वे. चीजें कैसे काम कर रही है, दैट्स ऑल. Right? अच्छा, we just have we have already gone through second part of thing. तो but एक काम करते हैं, we should start moving forward, right? Right? चलो चलो. So higher order function में क्या करता है JavaScript? It creates some higher order function for us, right? Which are these higher order functions, which are called inbuilt higher order function, right? मतलब JavaScript खुद बना के देता है, like push and all. तो जैसे उस तरीके से we had inbuilt function, we had higher order functions, which are, I've already told you guys, map. For each we have filter and we have reduce and we have solve, right? तो ये कुछ higher order function है which our JavaScript provides, right? These all functions are only and only exclusively for array, ठीक? तो array पे ही चलेंगे. And how do we know कि these are higher order function? It's gonna follow at least one of these principles, right? So let's do one thing. Let's go and create an array. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and let's start with map, right? So now what map does is it basically iterates over each and every element. That's all it does. ये कभी सुना है कि हर एक एलिमेंट पे इटरेट करना है एरे के? हैव वी हर्ड इट समवेयर? ऐसे कुछ करने वाली, डू वी नो समथिंग लाइक दिस? लूप, loop, loops, right? So just exactly like loop, what we're going to do is we're going to store it in a variable. We apply array dot map, right? So dot map hai, that means it's a method. You have this bracket, and given that this is a higher order function, isme I'll pass an anonymous function, right? So now we have a map function in which we are passing another function. Is it a callback function? Is it a callback function? Right? And this callback function mein na, we accept 3 parameters. First is the element, second is the index, third is the array. Basically, element is gonna be her iteration pe this 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Right? I is gonna be index and array is gonna be this entire array. Right? So अगर मैं यहाँ पे जाके if I do console.log element, what am I getting? Each and every element, right? If I do comma I, I'm gonna get each and every index, right? And if I do comma array, I'm gonna get that entire array. जो भी array पे we are applying this map, right? So now, why do we need map when we already have a for loop? The thing is that let's say you're using map. Map is usually used to update the elements, right? So usually क्या होता है? We are going to use maps when we are dealing with array of objects, right? Websites में we don't usually use for loop, हम map के साथ जाते हैं. So let's say if you're creating a scalable structure like Amazon the platform, in that are you going to have millions of data? Millions of data होंगे. Will you ever know कि end कहाँ पे होगा वो data? It's going to end at 1 million, it's going to end at 2 million, 3 million. So we are not pretty sure about length कितना जाने वाला है, right? Do we need any of those parameters in map? Do we need to think कि start कहाँ से होगा? Do we need to think जाता कहाँ पे? Do we need to think it's adding or not? No, right? So it's solving a lot of issues for you guys directly. Plus, it's a plus point है, it returns a new array rather than updating this array. What do I mean by that? Let's say यहाँ पे जाके what I did was I return, right, let value equals to, नहीं इतना नहीं करते हैं. Let's say if I picked element, right, and this element पे what I did was element equals to element into 2, right? So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to double the element value, double the element value, double the element value, double the element value. So if I finally just return element after updating the element value now if I go and print this n array, if I do console.log of this n array, I'll get a updated version, right? एक मुझे updated version मिल जाएगा, right? But if I still go and print console.log original array original array, it's still the same, it's not affected, right? So let's say you have multiple data, कुछ डेटा पे you wanna apply discount, कुछ पे you don't, तो you should be going with map, क्योंकि in map the original data is not disturbed, you are gonna get a new set of array. Clear? Clear? This is all map does. It's usually used to update things, and all it does is it iterates over an array. Clear है? Clear है? Right? थोड़ी देर में हम array of object भी देखेंगे, but for now इतना बात clear है. Why do we provide 3 parameter in function? JavaScript accept करता है. Later, you guys only be using these two, right? Array is not very much used. ठीक, सिर्फ एलिमेंट एंड समटाइम्स यू माइट नीड इंडेक्स, राइट? सो एग्जैक्ट इन दिस सेम पेज, keep this thing in mind. Map returns new array. Correct? Correct? Map returns new array. That's correct. Okay. Now we have another thing which is called for each, and it's exact equal to map with a few change. Let's discuss about that. So let's say if I pick array and उसमें मैं for each run करता हूँ, right? So again, given that it's a higher order function, हम function pass करेंगे, right? It accepts exact same things, element comma I comma array, and I'm gonna go and do console.log element comma I comma array. Anything different? कुछ अलग है? कुछ अलग है? नहीं. There's one small difference. For each does not returns a new or updated array, right? मतलब for each is only used to iterate over things. It's not used to update your array. If I go and let's say if I do element equals to element into 2, and if I go and let's say इसको मैं store कर देता हूँ, let n array equals to this, right? If I go and finally return element just like we did in map, and मैं जाके console करूँ, right? So what am I getting? Screen freeze, guys. सबके लिए screen freeze हुआ क्या मेरा? Am I properly audible? ठीक है, तो जिनको हो रहा है गाइस प्लीज चेक योर इंटरनेट. ठीक है, सो गाइस एन एरे ना, एन एरे बोल रहा हूँ, फॉर ईच हैज अ प्रॉपर्टी ड्यू टू विच इट ऑलवेज, राइट, कीप दिस थिंग इन माइंड, इट ऑलवेज रिटर्न्स अनडिफाइंड. कुछ भी रिटर्न कर लो, फाइनली इट्स ऑलवेज गोना रिटर्न अनडिफाइंड, राइट? तो आगे चल के एक छोटा सा जो इश्यू आएगा ना, वो क्या आएगा? द डिफरेंस बिटवीन मैप एंड फॉर ईच इज दैट मैप का जो एरे है ना, इट कैन बी रीयूज्ड, बट कैन बी रीयूज फॉर ईच का वट एवर प्रोडक्ट दैट वी हैव? नो, राइट? तो this is a very favorite question of interviewers. What is the difference between map and for each? दो पॉइंट्स है हमारे पास. फर्स्ट पॉइंट क्या है? फर्स्ट पॉइंट क्या है? map returns an array, whereas for each returns what? For each returns what? Returns undefined. And this thing is gonna be always, right? हमेशा undefined return करेगा. There is no exceptions. ठीक? क्यों? JavaScript is written in that way only. Hindsight में इस तरीके से लिखा ही है कि it always returns undefined. Second difference क्या था? We can reuse map updated array of map, but we can't reuse updated array of for each, as it always returns undefined. ठीक, ये दो स्टेटमेंट ध्यान रखना. क्लियर है? क्लियर है व्हाट इज फॉर ईच यूज फॉर? देखो शॉर्टली हम क्या देखेंगे कि लास्ट टाइम व्हाट हैपेंड व्हेन यू गाइस वर क्रिएटिंग प्रोडक्ट्स, राइट? जब आप प्रोडक्ट बना रहे थे तो यू आर गोना क्रिएट वन प्रोडक्ट, अनदर प्रोडक्ट, अनदर प्रोडक्ट. ठीक, अब एक छोटी सी चीज बताना, दीज प्रोडक्ट्स वर एग्जैक्ट सेम, राइट? इन प्रोडक्ट में वी हैड नेम और वी हैड टाइटल, right? We had image का link and we had description. Were these property exact same in each and every product? है ना? But आपको क्या करना पड़ रहा था? You had to create a new div for each and everything. एक नया div बनाना पड़ रहा था for each and every element. Going forward, we're just gonna create one div, and ये div में ना we're gonna run a for each and we're gonna run a loop for this. नेक्स्ट लेक्चर में दिखाऊंगा कैसे करेंगे, बट गिविंग अ ब्रीफ कब यूज होंगे ये हायर ऑर्डर फंक्शन, राइट? तो इन केस वेयर वी डोंट हैव टू अपडेट द एरे, विल गो फॉर ईच. बट लेट्स से कि मुझे क्या करना है, मुझे अपने एलिमेंट्स फिल्टर करने हैं, सॉर्ट करने हैं, राइट। लेट्स से कि यूजर इज क्लिकिंग ऑन सॉर्ट द प्राइस बाय इंक्रीजिंग एंड डिक्रीजिंग। सो शुड वी सॉर्ट आवर प्रोडक्ट? प्रोडक्ट को सॉर्ट करूंगा, 1 रुपए वाले चीज पहले दिखेंगे, 10 रुपए वाले बाद में दिखेंगे, राइट। तो व्हेन यू डूइंग दैट, डू वी अपडेट द ओरिजिनल एलिमेंट, या फिर हम फिर से वापस ओरिजिनल लेवल पे रिवर्ट होते हैं? अगर मैं वेबसाइट फिर से रिफ्रेश करूंगा तो जो प्रोडक्ट्स है वो पैक हो जाते हैं इन देयर ओरिजिनल फॉर्मेट, इन देयर मेस्ड अप रैंडम फॉर्मेट, राइट। तो वी डोंट हैव टू अपडेट द ओरिजिनल एरे, वी जस्ट हैव टू डिफाइन अ न्यू एरे। इन दैट केस मैप इज द वे टू गो। टेक मोर ऑन दिस इन नेक्स्ट लेक्चर, कैसे करेंगे, कैसे होगा, विल बी डिस्कसिंग अबाउट दैट, यू डोंट टू वरी अबाउट इट। फॉर नाउ इज द यूज केस अ बिट क्लियर? थोड़ा सा सेंस बनाते हैं। एंड इज फॉर ईच क्लियर कि हाउ डू वी यूज इट, एटलीस्ट यूज कैसे होता है, कैसे? ठीक। So again, after map and for each, we have one more, like we have few more actually. So we have filter also. Let me get this array and यहाँ पे जाते हैं, let me paste it. Right. So now let's say कि the user is saying कि can you please repeat for each usability? For each का usability is just that for each is never returning anything, right? So we can just directly use it in here जो भी हम content लिखेंगे, right? So in case you don't want to update your array ना, you'll go with for each. But let's say if you wanna update your array, you'll go with, right? Update करना है तो you'll go with now. चलो, now back in here. Let's say कि we want to filter our stuff, right? So we want to filter every even number, right? For example, अर्नब next lecture में I'll give you a better example. जब हम actually product को map करेंगे, ठीक, तब I'll show you the difference between for each and, ठीक है। अभी के लिए just use case ध्यान में रखो, how can we use map and for each, right? ठीक, क्योंकि अभी बताना time constraint won't be there. ठीक, चलो, so let's quickly discuss about filter, right? So filter नाम से क्या लगता है क्या करने वाला होगा? फिल्टर फिल्टर करेगा, फिल्टर करेगा, राइट। तो all you do is, let's say कि I have an array and this thing has a filter property, right? तो array dot let me just uncomment this, array dot filter, right? Higher order function है, we're gonna pass anonymous function, and guys ये भी same चीज accept करेगा, element comma I comma array, right? तो map for each filter exact same parameters accept करते हैं. If I do a console.log in there and array, no difference, right? But filter के साथ क्या होता है? What we have to do is we have to just return the condition based on which we want to filter our array. So let's say we just want to filter out odd elements, right? So odd elements, only we want odd elements. So all I have to do is when I'm writing the return statement now, I'll write element divisible by 2 equals to 1. So if they are fulfilling this condition, just return that. So if I do console.log of an array now, it'll say okay, I'm filtering out just the odd numbers. Right? Right? And this filter is again gonna return you new array, right? The original array is not gonna be affected. ठीक, मैप वॉज डूइंग सेम थिंग, नॉट एग्जैक्टली। मैप जो था वो क्या कर रहा था, आपके ओरिजिनल एरे को अपडेट कर रहा था फॉर ईच एलिमेंट, राइट। ऑफ कोर्स वी कैन राइट मैप फॉर दिस ऑल्सो, राइट, बट हमें थोड़ी ज्यादा कंडीशंस लगानी पड़ेंगी, लाइक दिस, लेट्स से एन एरे इक्वल्स टू एरे डॉट मैप एंड इन हियर फंक्शन, एंड इसके अंदर एलिमेंट आई एंड एन, राइट। एंड इन हियर आई वुड हैव टू राइट कंडीशंस लाइक इफ element is divisible by 2 equals to 1, right? Then only return the element. ठीक, तो इतनी सारी कंडीशन लगानी पड़ेगी and still when we are getting the n array, it was just printing the odd elements, बाकी जगह it was placing undefined. Right, इसी वजह से there is another higher order function called filter defined for this thing. ठीक है, make sense. Map की property क्या करती है ना, it goes and visit each and every element and it tries to modify it for each and every element, right? Filter का क्या काम होता है, it just modifies your array based on whatever condition that you have. क्लियर है, समझ आता है, सेंस बनाता है, right? So filter is again all you have to do is filter में you have to accept element I in array, and finally you just have to write return का condition, right? So let's say you want all the elements to be even, तो आपको condition लिखोगे for even, right? So it's just going to return even elements, right? Let's say if you just want elements which are greater than 5, right? So finally it's just going to return elements which are greater than 5. Right? Let's say if you just want to return elements which are equal to 5, just gonna get that in. Clear? ठीक, नेक्स्ट सेशन ना अभी दिखा देता हूँ भाई, एक सेकंड फिल्टर समझ आ गया, मतलब डॉम पे नेक्स्ट सेशन में दिखाऊंगा. फॉर नाउ आई कैन शो यू लाइक बेस्ड ऑन ऑब्जेक्ट, या आई कैन शो यू. ठीक, फिल्टर क्लियर है, तो आई कैन क्रिएट एन एरे ऑफ ऑब्जेक्ट एंड उस पर विल डिस्कस इन एक्चुअल फॉर्मेट, तब थोड़ा और सेंस बनाएगा. ठीक, चलो यहाँ पे आते हैं एंड लेट्स क्रिएट let data equals to we have to get a title and we should be having price. तो ठीक है, let's have object which have title, right? And let's say shirt maybe, right? And उसके साथ we should have a price, right? So 500. Tick. And then we're gonna have another thing. We're gonna have title in here. Wait, why am I getting error? Can you write object inside object? With not without key value pair. मुझे इसे array बनाना था. I was gonna make this thing an array, right? Object के अंदर object लिख सकते हैं, but object में क्या होता है? We have to assign key value pair, right? ठीक है, तो let's give it another title, trouser. Take, and let's give it a price. So 1000. Take. Let's say we have another thing. Let's say title tab, price 1500. Anything else? Let's say we have title footwear, right? And we have price. ठीक, तो गोइंग फॉरवर्ड हमें डेटा इस फॉर्मेट में दिखने वाला, right? Going forward we're gonna see for data in this format, and this format में we're gonna do mapping and all, right? So let's say if I want to filter out all the products which are less than 1000, क्योंकि मेरा 1000 रुपीज का बजट है, right? ऑब्जेक्ट्स इनसाइड एरे नहीं, एरे के अंदर ऑब्जेक्ट है भाई, क्या दिख रहा है? एरे के अंदर ऑब्जेक्ट. ठीक ठीक, चलो. So back in here, let's say कि I just wanna print, I wanna filter out all the things which are less than 1000, right? So should I be going with filter वाला higher order function? Filter वाला higher order function, right? So what I'll do is I'll write let n array equals to data dot filter, right? And इसके अंदर let's write function element comma I comma array, and यहाँ पे जाके if I write console dot log element, I'm gonna get each and every object expected as expected. हर एक object मिल रहा है. If I wanna access price of each and every object, should I be writing element dot price, right? ठीक है, तो filter में all we have to do is we have to write a return statement. तो मैं क्या लिखूंगा? I'll write return element dot price जितने भी प्रोडक्ट लेस है 1000 से, राइट. सो आई एम गोना डू दिस एंड फाइनली अगर मैं जाके console.log_n_array लिखता हूँ तो आई एम गोना गेट जस्ट वन प्रोडक्ट विच इज योर शर्ट. इज दैट करेक्ट? इज दैट करेक्ट? ठीक. लेट्स से कि आपने फिल्टर लगाया कि मेरा बजट है 1500 का, सो you'll be getting 3 products, एक 500 का, एक 1000 का. If I make it less than or equals to, तब क्या होगा? How many products are we gonna get? देखो 3, right? तो less than or equals to, now we are gonna get 3 product, 500, 1000 and 1500. क्लियर? तो इस तरीके से आप फिल्टर करोगे एंड फाइनली आप क्या करोगे? फिल्टर को रीसेट भी करोगे. तो जब रीसेट करोगे ना, यू स्टिल हैव एक्सेस टू योर ओरिजिनल डेटा, राइट? इट्स नॉट अपडेटेड. ठीक है? कैन वी सेट 2 कंडीशंस? ऑफ कोर्स यू कैन, बट फिर क्या करोगे? फाइनली रिटर्न स्टेटमेंट इज जस्ट गोना एक्सेप्ट वन कंडीशन, तो जस्ट मेक इट इन अ ब्रैकेट एंड यहाँ पे अप्लाई the element dot price should be less than or equals to 1500 and element dot title should be equals to shirt. Is this condition true anywhere? कहीं पे भी true हो रहा है? Yes, we have a shirt which is less than 500, so I'm gonna get one product which is shirt which is less than 500. But let's say कि मैं footwear लिखता हूँ, तो इस footwear less than 2000? नो, राइट. तो अगर मैं फुटवेयर लिखता हूँ यहाँ पे, आई एम गोना गेट एन एम्प्टी एरे. ठीक. तो बोथ कंडीशन हैव टू बी ट्रू. यू कैन राइट मल्टीपल कंडीशंस बट फाइनली इट शुड रिटर्न वन फाइनल आंसर, राइट? इसलिए वी क्रिएट ब्रैकेट्स, पैरेंथेसिस. ठीक. इफ देयर इज और देन यू विल गोना गेट बेस्ड ऑन और, राइट? सो हर एक कंडीशन इज एप्लीकेबल, राइट? Everything which is less than 1500 is printed, plus everything which has footwear in it is printed. तो चारों के चारों आ गए. Clear? How much permutation and combination of filter are required? Trust me, I've created multiple of these setups. It's not very much complex at all, right? यही चीज लिखने वाले हो when you will be creating filters. राइट. सॉर्ट करना भी आई जस्ट टेल यू गाइस. एक बार ये क्लियर हो जाए, बोल दो कि हाँ समझ आ गया, तब आगे बढ़ेंगे. ठीक. समझ आया? समझ आया? आगे बढ़े. ठीक है. ठीक. तो जिस तरीके से वी हैव फिल्टर टू फिल्टर आउट स्टफ, वी हैव अ फंक्शनैलिटी जिसको बोलते हैं सॉर्ट. सॉर्ट क्या करेगा? सॉर्ट क्या करेगा? सॉर्टिंग का मतलब क्या होगा? असेंडिंग एंड डिसेंडिंग, करेक्ट. तो लेट्स से कि हमारे पास इतने सारे एलिमेंट्स है एंड मैं क्या किया, मैंने थोड़ा ऑर्डर मिक्स एंड मैच कर दिया. ये रहा एंड इसको लेट्स थ्रो इट इन हियर. ठीक. एंड यहाँ पे राइट. तो द थिंग्स आर इन रैंडम फॉर्मेट, राइट? प्राइसेस आर इन डिफरेंट रेंज. लेट्स से कि मुझे हर एक प्राइस आई वांट टू फिक्स इट 500 देन 1000 देन 1500 देन 2000, राइट? तो आई एम सॉर्टिंग इट फ्रॉम असेंडिंग, इन असेंडिंग ऑर्डर, छोटे से बड़ा, और इज इट डिसेंडिंग? असेंडिंग है, असेंडिंग ऑर्डर, राइट? छोटे से बड़ा. ठीक. सो टू डू समथिंग लाइक दैट, लेट मी जस्ट कॉपी दिस एंड आई विल कीप दिस थिंग इंटैक्ट. ये चेंज नहीं करते हैं, फॉर योर रेफरेंस. लेट्स क्रिएट न्यू. शॉर्ट बताने से पहले एक काम करता हूँ, पहले एक छोटे से एरे पे समझाता हूँ सो दैट यू गाइस गेट एन आइडिया, फिर उसके बाद स्केल करेंगे. ठीक. चलो छोटे पे पहले करते हैं. सो वी हैव दिस अनसॉर्टेड एरे, राइट? तो व्हाट यू विल डू इज you'll create an array equals to array dot sort and इसको ये कर दोगे. So if I go and do console dot log an array, am I getting a sorted array? Sorted array मिल रहा है. In which case is it sorted? Ascending or descending? Right? तो by default ना sort functionality क्या करता है, चीजों को ascending order में sort करता है. Let's say if you want it to sort in descending order ना, what you will do is you will apply an empty function in it, and this thing is gonna take 2 parameters. Basically it's gonna take 2 things. first element and the coming element, right? So we represent it in this format, a comma b, right? And we have to return if we want to sort things, right? तो अगर मैं a minus b लिखता हूँ, what am I getting? Ascending order. तो basically I'm checking if the next element, अगर मैं next element को इससे minus करता हूँ, if I'm gonna get negative ना, in hindsight JavaScript क्या करेगा, इनको swap कर देगा, right? right? तो यहाँ पे अगर 3 होता और यहाँ पे अगर 2 होता ना, तो it was gonna swap these things, right? So according to that, if I go and do b minus a, what's happening? Descending order, right? तो अभी स्वैपिंग उल्टे केस में हो रहा है, राइट? आपको स्वैपिंग पे ध्यान नहीं रखना है, बट कीप a small hack in your mind. We have to define 2 parameters, a comma b, first parameter, second parameter, anything. If you are decreasing first parameter with second parameter, you're going to sort in ascending order. If you're decreasing second wala parameter minus first parameter, you will be doing in decreasing. Clear? Clear? Sort के लिए आपको बस इतना से ध्यान. All good? ठीक है, ठीक है. So now let's say कि ये sorting मुझे in normal array I can apply it if I want to apply it on my product array. Right? I want to sort it based on price. So what I'll do is I'll create an array and इसमें I'll take my data dot sort and इसके अंदर again I'm gonna write function and element 1 comma element 2 and in here I'll be basically writing, मुझे ascending order में करना है guys, ascending order. So should I minus element 1 minus element 2 or element 2 minus element 1? ascending order, छोटे से बड़ा, right? तो initial minus next one, element 1 minus element 2, right? ठीक है. Now why if I go and do console dot log n array of this, why is it not sorted? Sort क्यों नहीं हुआ? संतोष, correct? Element 1 is gonna be object or it's directly gonna be price? Object होने वाला है. So should we be accessing the price? Element 1 dot price, element 2 dot price. अभी जाके check करें. Is it sorted? 500, 1000, 1500 and 2000. ठीक, ascending is default. Yes. ठीक, उल्टा कर दे element 2 minus वो तो let's say अगर price, अब हम क्या करेंगे, element 2 dot price minus element. तो अभी it's gonna be in descending order, 2000 then 1500 then 1000 and then 2. Simple. Clear? How is it working with subtraction? It's a bit complex thing which is going in hindsight. उसके लिए you have to understand something which is part of DSA, swapping जो होता है. But to give you guys a brief, क्या हो रहा है कि when you have an array, right? अगर आप a minus b लिखते हो तो what it does is ये element में से ये minus करता है, right? तो in case you are writing a minus b, तो 3 minus 2, is it gonna be a negative integer or positive integer? 3 minus, no, my bad, 3 minus 2, yeah, it's going to be positive integer, right? So what it's going to do is, it's going to, यार नहीं, कुछ गलत बोल रहा हूँ. When we are doing a minus b, वो क्या करता है? Ascending order में करता है, right? ठीक है. And we have 3. हाँ ठीक है, that's correct, no? तो जब ये positive है, right? तो what it's doing is it's sending it to the next element or it's swapping it, right? But अगर negative आता है ना, तो it's leaving it to b. But उल्टे केस में क्या होता है? When we do b minus a, the opposite is happening. If it's coming negative, if it's coming positive, वहीं पे रह रहा है, negative आने पे वो swap हो रहा है. Right? Again, it's more of an algorithm kind of thing. It's not something that you would understand for now, but ये ध्यान रखो कि अगर first element minus last element करोगे तो you're gonna get ascending and last minus first करोगे तो you're gonna get descending. Does it work alphabetically? Of course it does. Alphabetically भी काम करता है, right? तो it's gonna sort this thing in alphabet format. अगर आप जाके लिखो element2 dot title and ये कर दो title, right? So if you go and look it in here ना, तो अभी it's gonna sort it based on your first alphabet, right? तो S will be the last alphabet, फिर उसके पीछे F आएगा, then that and that. I don't think it's working. Sort n array print कर रहे हैं with title. Okay, let's do one thing. Let's just quickly do a console dot log element one dot title. Okay, so we are getting that. Sure. Now let's do return element one dot title minus element two dot title. Okay, so is it sorting though? I'm not sure. Element one minus element two किया है ना हमने, तो okay. So let me take a normal array. Might be making some mistake. So let's say let array equals to d comma a comma d comma c, and इस पे if we apply let an array equals to array dot sort, right? So if I do console dot log array an array, so it's sorting. Okay, it's sorting in this format. It's sorting in that format, right? But descending में I think जब हम in fallback function pass कर रहे हैं ना, then we have to give it something. Yeah, I remember. अच्छा अभी ध्यान आया हम क्या कर रहे हैं. So by default ये जो है it sorts in ascending order, right? By default it sorts in ascending order, but when we are doing it in another fashion, right? By default वाला method apply नहीं कर रहे हैं, we're just going for this normal fashion. So we'll have to tell it कि आप string के साथ deal कर रहे हो, right? So I don't exactly remember the keyword. Let me see. It was like compare locally. Let me see. This this local compare, right? So we're gonna use this wala thing. ठीक, so वापस चलते हैं. Sort करते वक्त I will rather return element 2 dot title and इसको I'll do local compare with element 1 dot title. ठीक, so in this case it should sort it. I think it's sorted, right? TSFNC. Yeah. And I guess if you like for your decreasing order, you can do this, right? So again, वो क्या होता है? By default, this sort is gonna sort things, be it string, be it anything, in your ascending order. But descending के लिए, you'll have to use an inbuilt function which is called local compare, right? So again, guys, ये ऐसे नाम है कि you don't exactly remember it, right? It's not even local, right? मैं compare local खोज रहा था because I remember कि something like this we can use. ठीक, तो it's local. तो again you can use ambient for that, but you should be aware कि कुछ ऐसा method है, right? Then only you can search for it. सही है. Sort clear है? Sort कैसे हो रहा है everyone? Sort कैसे हो रहा है, कैसे कब use करेंगे ये भी clear है, right? तो कल जब DOM बता दूंगा ना, I'll tell you कि how you can use higher order function with products and you can use everything with it. क्लियर है? आगे बढ़े. एक और हायर ऑर्डर फंक्शन रह गया which is basically your reduce. राइट। तो रिड्यूस कुछ नहीं करता है, सॉर्ट इज बाय डिफॉल्ट असेंडिंग, यस यस, राइट। सो रिड्यूस क्या करेगा, लेट्स से वी हैव एन एरे, राइट, 2 3 4 5 6 7। तो रिड्यूस सो फार एक क्विक मैप कर देते हैं। मैप क्या रिटर्न कर रहा था, व्हाट वाज मैप रिटर्निंग? मैप वाज रिटर्निंग एरे, राइट, न्यू एरे कोई भी हो, फाइनली इट वाज रिटर्निंग एन एरे। फिल्टर क्या रिटर्न कर रहा था? फिल्टर अनडिफाइंड रिटर्न कर रहा था, या फिर फॉर ईच अनडिफाइंड रिटर्न कर रहा था? फिल्टर एरे रिटर्न कर रहा था, राइट। फॉर ईच वाज रिटर्निंग अनडिफाइंड, राइट। उसके बाद वी कवर्ड सॉर्ट, सॉर्ट वाज रिटर्निंग एरे अगेन, एरे, राइट, ठीक है। नाउ विल बी टॉकिंग अबाउट रिड्यूस, राइट। तो जस्ट कीप दिस थिंग्स इन माइंड, क्या क्या रिटर्न हो रहा है, राइट, दैट थिंग इज समथिंग दैट यू शुड बी अवेयर अबाउट। रिड्यूस क्या रिटर्न करेगा, आई टेल यू गाइस बिफोर हैंड, इट्स फाइनली गोना रिटर्न अ सिंगल डिजिट नंबर, राइट। तो जो reduce है, finally it's gonna return a single digit number. It basically reduces your data into one single number, right? So let's say कि if you have these number, आपको क्या करना है, you have to do a sum on these. So what you will do is you will use reduce in this case, right? तो यहाँ पे जाके you'll write reduce, it's gonna take function, but यहाँ पे ना it's not exactly gonna take element image and all, राइट। रिड्यूस जो है वो एलिमेंट इमेज एंड एलिमेंट इमेज बोल रहा हूँ, एलिमेंट इंडेक्स एंड ऑल वो नहीं लेगा। इट टेक्स टू वैल्यूज, बेसिकली सॉर्ट की तरह प्रीवियस एंड करेंट वैल्यू, राइट। तो इट टेक्स समथिंग विच इज कॉल्ड एक्यूमुलेटर, राइट, जो नाम है जैसे आई एम राइटिंग दैट, एंड इट टेक्स अ करेंट वैल्यू, राइट। यू कैन नेम इट एनीथिंग, राइट, जस्ट फॉर द सेक ऑफ फर्स्ट टाइम कीवर्ड है जो वो बोल रहा हूँ, राइट। तो इनका नाम होता है, फर्स्ट वन का नाम होता है एक्यूमुलेटर, सेकंड वन का नाम होता है करेंट वैल्यू, right? By default this accumulator is very first element, and by default this current value is going to be your next element. So her iteration में these both get plused by one index, right? So first iteration में accumulator is going to be 2, current value is going to be 3, next iteration में accumulator is going to be 3 and whatever function we have done with it, and current value is going to be 4, right? So let's say कि यहाँ पे जाके we are returning accumulator plus current value plus current value, right? So if I go and do console dot log n array, what are we getting? क्या मिल रहा है? We are getting sum of all these elements, right? If I write minus, where can I get difference of all of these, right? And if I go and write multiplication, it's gonna give us multiplication of each number, right? So basically it's used to do calculations, right? छोटी सी और चीज है, this accumulator by default is the very first element, but you can update it, right? तो let's say कि आपको accumulator change करना है, तो you will write it after this anonymous function, ठीक। तो overall reduce जो है ना, it takes two parameter, right? First will be your callback function, I'm just writing it as cf, and second will be accumulator. By default accumulator is very first element, you can update it with anything. Let's say मैं इसको update करता हूँ 100 से, right? Right. So now if I do a plus plus, it's gonna give us 135. Why? Because 35 was the sum of this array and accumulator was initially 100. So 100 plus 35, 135. ठीक। तो इसका यूज केस इज यूजुअली व्हेन यू आर क्रिएटिंग कार्ड पेज एंड ऑल, तो जैसे कार्ड पेज में यू वांट टू गिव द सम ऑफ फाइनल एलिमेंट्स, राइट, तब यू कैन यूज समथिंग लाइक दिस, ठीक। वन मोर टाइम, व्हाट इज एक्यूमुलेटर एंड करंट वैल्यू? बाय डिफॉल्ट व्हेन यू आर नॉट यूजिंग ये वाला सेकंड एक्यूमुलेटर का प्रॉपर्टी, बाय डिफॉल्ट accumulator is the very first element and current value will be your first वाला index, right? तो zeroth index will be accumulator, current value will be first वाला index. चेंजिंग जैसे जैसे चेंज होता जाता है, ये सारी चीजें एक्यूमुलेटर में ऐड होती जाती है, राइट। सो यहाँ पे मैं दिखाता हूँ, आई एम गोना राइट इटरेशंस, राइट। तो फर्स्ट इटरेशन पे accumulator is gonna be 2 and current value is gonna be 3. agree everyone? इतना सा पार्ट, बस इतना सा क्लियर है? we are not using anything by default. नेक्स्ट इटरेशन में क्या होगा? नेक्स्ट इटरेशन में व्हाट ऑपरेशन आर वी डूइंग हियर? accumulator plus current value, right? Right. So accumulator is 2, current value is 3. Next iteration में जो accumulator होगा, that's going to be 5, the product of whatever operation that we have run. And current value क्या होगी? The very next element, which is 4. Right? तो third iteration में can you guys tell me accumulator और current value क्या होने वाली है? Accumulator will be 9, current value will be 5. Very, very good. But things change जब हम default की जगह we use our own property. अभी in this case, in second case, accumulator will be your 100 and current value will be your very first element now. Right? तो ये होगा. Then in second iteration, accumulator will be 102 and current value will be 3. Clear है? Clear है? Everyone, reduce समझ आता है क्या है, क्यों है? ठीक, ये 100 वाला नहीं समझ आया. ओके ओके, तो 100 वाले में क्या होता है ना, वी कैन अप्लाई आवर ओन कस्टम अक्यूमुलेटर, राइट? सो लेट्स से कि वी वांट टू स्टार्ट फ्रॉम 100, एक हेड स्टार्ट दे रहे हैं 100 का, राइट? सो नाउ accumulator will be our own accumulator at very first iteration and current value by default shift हो जाएगा, राइट? तो नाउ 2 will be your current value. बट अगर हमने अपना कस्टम accumulator ऐड नहीं किया है, so by default JavaScript क्या करेगा, accumulator will gonna be 2, very first element. Clear है? It's like an initializer. Yes. Got it? ठीक है. Sir, we can do like if you want the sum of only which is above 5. तो in that case आप क्या करोगे? शेख थोड़ी देर में आता हूँ उस पर. Just give me a second. ठीक, it's a good question. Just give me a second. I'll come to it. ठीक, I'll hold you to that statement. मैं कॉपी कर लेता हूँ आपका टेक्स्ट and I'll paste it in here. ठीक, तो शेख भाई का ये है क्वेश्चन and we'll talk about this. Right? We can do like if you want to sum only which is above 5. ठीक है? So गौरव करेक्ट. पहले तो ये बताओ इतना पार्ट समझ आ गया रिड्यूस में? ठीक, तो let's do one thing. Let's apply it in object first. ठीक, तो ये रहा हमारा ऑब्जेक्ट. Let me just copy this object and let me paste it. ये लो, राइट? एंड इसको लेट्स रिफ्रेश. ठीक, तो नाउ व्हाट आई वांट टू डू इज आई वांट टू गेट द सम ऑफ ऑल द एलिमेंट्स दैट वी हैव, राइट? जितने भी एलिमेंट है आई वांट द सम ऑफ ऑल द प्राइसेस. रिड्यूस साउंड्स लाइक रिड्यूस का काम, राइट? तो रादर देन राइटिंग एन एरे, क्योंकि रिड्यूस इज रिटर्निंग अ डिजिट, आई विल गो फॉर वैल्यू एंड यहाँ पे आई अप्लाई डेटा डॉट रिड्यूस. I'll write function and accumulator comma current value, right? So see you are ठीक. Now यहाँ पे in cases like this ना we have to use accumulator, our own custom accumulator. Why? By default accumulator क्या होने वाला है? By default accumulator क्या होने वाला है? The very first element. Is it a object? Is it a object? By default, right? तो अगर आप एक ऑब्जेक्ट पिक करते हो और आप उसमें एक नंबर प्लस करने का ट्राई करते हो, इज दिस थिंग गोना गिव अस नॉट अ नंबर, है ना? लेट्स सी. तो यहाँ पे जाके इफ आई डू अ रिटर्न accumulator प्लस करंट विच इज बेसिकली आवर करंट एलिमेंट एंड उसमें डॉट प्राइस. ठीक, तो इन दिस केस इफ आई गो एंड डू कंसोल डॉट लॉग वैल्यू, नो, अभी क्या होगा, अभी हमें एक अजीब सी चीज मिलेगी, राइट? इट्स गोना बी बेसिकली नॉट समथिंग विच इज अ नंबर. तो रादर देन डूइंग दिस हम क्या करेंगे, विल प्रोवाइड आवर ओन कस्टम एक्यूमुलेटर विच इज गोना बी 0. ठीक, तो अभी क्या होगा, इट्स गोना स्टार्ट फ्रॉम 0 एंड इट्स गोना कीप ऑन अपडेटिंग करेंट डॉट प्राइस, राइट? सो 2000 and 1000, आई थिंक इट्स फाइन. 5000 करेक्ट है? करेक्ट है? And is it clear how can we calculate cart page का total? Right? Right? ठीक है. तो अभी शेख के फिर से क्वेश्चन पे आते हैं, which was this thing. Sir, why did क्या? प्रशांत, why did क्या? स्टॉप हो गया है स्क्रीन, सबके लिए स्टॉप हुआ है, ये कर्सर घूम रहा है, सर्कल बन रहा है एक, नहीं तो आपके लिए स्टॉप हुआ है, प्लीज चेक योर इंटरनेट कनेक्शन। करेंट डॉट प्राइस, बेसिकली दिस करेंट ऑब्जेक्ट एंड उसका डॉट प्राइस विच इज दिस 500, 2000, 1500, 100। क्लियर? ऑब्जेक्ट को एक्सेस कर रहे हैं तो वी हैव टू एक्सेस द थिंग, राइट? चलो, now let's go for this statement, right? So basically let's again reiterate that thing, ये जो हमने किया था यहाँ पे, let's again talk about this. चलो, so map was returning an array, filter was returning an array, for each was returning undefined, and sort was returning an array. Finally we have reduce. What was reduce returning? A value, we can say a number, right? A number, right? So now if I store the product of all of these in a variable, कौन कौन सी चीजें रीयूज हो सकती है? रीयूजेबल कौन कौन सी चीजें, कौन कौन से मेथड्स रीयूजेबल है? मैप, फिल्टर एंड सॉर्ट ओनली, राइट? तो देयर इज अ कॉन्सेप्ट which is called method chaining, right? What does that mean? We chain one method to another. Let's see. So let me just comment this one out real quick, and let's make an array, right? Let array equals to 2 7 3 8 5, right? And मैं क्या कर रहा हूँ? What I'm doing is I'm doing a filter on this, right? So मैं क्या कर रहा हूँ? I'm doing let an array equals to array dot filter and this thing function element, and here what I want to do is return element which are divisible by 2, right? So if I do console dot log of an array, am I gonna get only 2 in it, and it's an array, so guys tell me, overall is this thing जितना मैंने mark किया है, however much I've marked, is that thing overall an array? Finally, is that particular piece of code जो मैंने mark किया है, is that overall an array? Finally, right? तो मैं क्या करूंगा? I'll just pick this entire thing and I'll write a dot reduce on it, right? And in this, what I'm doing is I'm getting accumulator, I'm getting element, and I'm returning accumulator plus element. क्या कर रहा हूँ? समझ आ रहा है? Basically I have filtered my array, and out of that filtered array na, I'm using reduce. So finally, how many elements were even? Only 2 and 8, right? What will be the reduce of 2 and 8 if we are doing a sum? 15. क्या बात है भाई? 10, right? तो अगर मैं finally n array print करूं, am I getting 10? Right? तो am I chaining multiple methods together? Filter के साथ reduce, not an issue, right? So this concept is called method chaining, right? So if we want to sum of only which is above 5, how many elements here are above 5? 5 के ऊपर कौन से? 7 and 8. So what I'll do is I'll write another condition, let n array 2 equals to array dot filter. You know, I know array will still be same, right? Array modify नहीं होगा. So I'm gonna write array dot filter. In this I'm gonna write function element, and return statement will be, you guys tell me, return statement में क्या condition होगी? What condition is gonna be there in return statement? Element is greater than 5, right? This thing is gonna return an array. So can I chain it? Reduce function element accumulator comma element, right? Return accumulator plus element. If I do console dot log n array 2, 15. Clear है? right? So this is method chaining, and method chaining na gives you another difference between map and for each. क्या है difference between map and for each based on method chaining? In map, can I apply method chaining with map? Yes, yes, because map returns an array. Can I apply method chaining on for each? No, because it returns a undefined. Clear? तो map and for each के बीच में we have seen three differences. Right? So that's how we do this. Line number 392 से कुछ समझ नहीं आया. 392 this one. यहां तक समझ आ गया? ओके ठीक है. तो 392 में हमने क्या किया है? फर्स्ट वी वर फिल्टरिंग थिंग्स, राइट? तो इतना पार्ट समझ आया कि हमने एरे डॉट फिल्टर लगाया. ओके, आई थिंक इशू कहाँ आ रहा है? यू गाइस आर थिंकिंग कि यहाँ पे वी आर डूइंग एरे डॉट फिल्टर, राइट? तो नाउ keep this thing in mind. This filter is going to return a new array. The original array is not going to be modified. Is that clear? The original array will not be modified. So if I do console.log of array, we're going to still get the original array. Right? Now what I'm doing is in original array, I'm applying a filter. Right? And I'm filtering it based on element should be greater than 5. So it is returning me 7 and 5. Itna part clear hai? Is that fine? Just this thing. Right? And overall, finally, this thing is returning an array. So can I apply reduce on it? Right? So that's what I'm doing. Right? I'm accessing accumulator. I'm accessing current value. And what I'm doing is I'm finally returning accumulator plus current value. Henceforth, 15. Now clear? Now clear? Everyone? Everyone? Any doubts in this thing? Right? So for now, we have overall just seen it based on hypothetical arrays of product and all. Later, you'll see how you can apply it in DOM and create websites. Okay? हाँ शिवम, खत्म ही. I don't have anything planned after this. Right? So clear है? So in how React the reduce on the array original or the last one. We are updating it based on the last array, right? So array dot filter is giving us array of 7 and 8. And on that 7 and 8, we are applying dot reduce. Right? So it's not necessary that you have to do it in this fashion only. You can make it more readable. How can you do that? What you will do is, you'll pick now n array 2 is equals to n array 2 and you can apply it on it. That's totally fine. If this thing is more readable for you guys, you can use it. Take when will we practically use it in next lecture? Smith, is this thing clear? Right? So yeah. All right. अगर 5 से greater एक ही number होता तो reduce क्या return करेगा? It's just gonna return that number only. Right? So let's say कि 5 से greater there is just one number. Right? So it's just gonna return that number only. 80 return. ठीक, again guys, these things are questions are gonna be a lot more. आपको क्या करना है? You have to start applying things on your own and you'll get an idea. ठीक है? तो again I've shown you the path. All you have to do is हर path पे checkpoint पे आके थोड़ी सी practice करनी है. That's all. Clear? Clear? All right.